8 American attack submarines infiltrate the Black Sea and sink 43 Russian warships at their moorings in a 4-hour nighttime attack. Putin's Black Sea fleet is annihilated before it can respond. June 17, 2025. Black Sea, Sevastopol and Novorossiysk naval bases. At 11:47 p.m., 8 Virginia-class nuclear attack submarines were positioned at carefully planned locations around the 2 primary bases of Russia's Black Sea fleet: USS Virginia, USS Texas, USS North Dakota, USS John Warner, USS Illinois, USS Washington, USS Colorado, and USS Indiana had spent the previous 14 days transiting into the Black Sea undetected, navigating through the shallow and heavily monitored Turkish Straits at night using ultra-quiet operations. Tonight, they would execute Operation Crimson Dawn, the most audacious submarine attack since World War II. Sink Russia's entire Black Sea fleet while the ships slept at their moorings. The strategic context was critical. Russia's Black Sea fleet, operating from bases in occupied Crimea and mainland Russia, had been conducting attacks on Ukrainian ports, threatening NATO shipping, and launching cruise missiles at civilian targets. After Russia ignored ultimatums to cease attacks and withdraw from Ukrainian waters, the United States determined that eliminating the Black Sea fleet was necessary to protect maritime commerce and prevent further Russian aggression. But the operation required absolute secrecy. If Russian forces detected American submarines approaching, the element of surprise would be lost, and the submarines would face overwhelming counterattacks from aircraft, mines, and coastal defenses. The target list was comprehensive and devastating. At Sevastopol Naval Base in occupied Crimea, 26 Russian warships were moored: 3 Grigorovich-class frigates, 6 Buyan M-class corvettes, 4 improved Kilo-class submarines, 2 Alligator-class landing ships, 8 patrol boats, and 3 support vessels. At Novorossiysk Naval Base on Russia's mainland coast, 17 additional vessels were moored: 2 Grigorovich-class frigates, 4 Buyan M corvettes, 3 improved Kilos, 6 patrol boats, and 2 landing ships. Total, 43 Russian vessels representing the combat corps of the Black Sea Fleet, collectively worth over $8 billion and crewed by approximately 4,200 sailors. The 8 Virginia-class submarines were positioned to provide overlapping coverage. USS Virginia and USS Texas focused on Sevastopol's main naval harbor. USS North Dakota and USS John Warner covered the submarine pens. USS Illinois and USS Washington targeted Novorossiysk, and USS Colorado and USS Indiana maintained positions to intercept any Russian ships that attempted to escape or patrol boats that might interfere. Each submarine carried approximately 12 MiG-48 ADCAP torpedoes, the most advanced heavyweight torpedo in the world. Total arsenal: 96 torpedoes against 43 targets. At midnight precisely, the attack began. USS Virginia, positioned 8,000 yards from Sevastopol's main pier, fired the first torpedo at the Russian frigate Admiral Grigorovich, moored alongside the dock. The Mk-48, traveling at 55 knots and guided by wire from the submarine, covered the distance in approximately 4 minutes. At 12:04 a.m., the torpedo struck Admiral Grigorovich below the waterline amidships. The 650-pound high-explosive warhead detonated, breaking the frigate's keel. The ship, moored and unable to maneuver, began flooding catastrophically. Within 8 minutes, Admiral Grigorovich capsized at her moorings, trapping over 180 sailors inside. At 12:05 a.m., USS Texas fired 2 torpedoes at 2 Buyan M corvettes moored side by side. Both torpedoes struck within 20 seconds of each other. The corvettes, smaller vessels with minimal armor, were devastated. One sank immediately. The other, blown apart by the explosion, remained partially above water, but was a total loss. 43 Russian sailors died in the initial explosions. Another 28 drowned trapped in compartments as the ships sank. Should submarines attack ships at moorings or wait for them to sail into open water? Type A for mooring attacks maximizing surprise. Type B for open water engagements allowing escape chances. Comment your reasoning. Between 12:05 and 12:30 a.m., the 8 submarines fired 64 torpedoes in a carefully coordinated sequence. The attacks were timed to prevent Russian forces from organizing effective responses. At Sevastopol, explosions occurred every 2 to 3 minutes as torpedoes found targets. The second Grigorovich frigate, Admiral Essen, was struck by 2 torpedoes and sank at her mooring in under 6 minutes. 4 more Buyanem corvettes were hit and destroyed. The Alligator-class landing ships, massive vessels carrying troops and equipment, were struck by multiple torpedoes that detonated ammunition and fuel stores, creating secondary explosions visible from miles away. At Novorossiysk, the attacks were equally devastating. USS Illinois fired 4 torpedoes at the frigates Admiral Makarov and Admiral Grigorovich, the class namesake, striking both vessels and sinking them within minutes. USS Washington targeted the corvettes and patrol boats, firing 8 torpedoes that destroyed 6 vessels. The submarine pens, where Russian Kilo-class submarines were moored, became primary targets. USS North Dakota and USS John Warner fired torpedoes into the pens, striking submarines that had no chance to dive or maneuver. 4 improved Kilo submarines were destroyed, 3 at Sevastopol and 1 at Novorossiysk. Subscribe to Navy Mission now for the most detailed submarine warfare coverage. This is analysis that reveals modern undersea combat. By 12:45 a.m., 45 minutes into the attack, Russian forces began responding. Alarms sounded across both bases. Helicopters scrambled to search for submarines. Fast patrol boats that survived the initial attacks departed their moorings to hunt the attackers. And coastal defense batteries activated, searching waters near the bases for contacts. But the American submarines, having fired their torpedoes and conducted battle damage assessment, were already withdrawing from the immediate attack zones at maximum quiet speed. At 1:15 a.m., a Russian Ka-27 helicopter detected USS Colorado using dipping sonar as the submarine transited away from Novorossiysk. The helicopter dropped 2 torpedoes. USS Colorado detected the incoming weapons and deployed countermeasures while executing emergency maneuvers. Both Russian torpedoes were decoyed away by noisemakers and missed the submarine. USS Colorado dove to 600 feet and evaded further detection. At 1:30 a.m., as the submarines continued withdrawing, they fired their remaining torpedoes at targets of opportunity. USS Indiana, detecting a Russian patrol boat attempting to locate submarines, fired 1 Mk-48 from 6,000 yards. The torpedo struck the patrol boat and destroyed it completely, killing all 23 crew members. USS Washington engaged 2 support vessels attempting to provide firefighting assistance to burning warships, sinking both with single torpedo hits. By 2 a.m., all planned targets had been engaged. The 8 submarines, having expended 84 of their 96 torpedoes, began the challenging task of exiting the Black Sea undetected. Russian forces, reeling from the devastating attacks, conducted intense anti-submarine warfare operations throughout the remaining hours of darkness. Helicopters, patrol boats, and shore-based sensors searched frantically for the American submarines. But the Virginia-class boats, designed specifically for operations in hostile waters, used their advanced stealth, speed, and sensors to evade detection. At 3:47 a.m., USS Virginia, transiting south at 400 feet depth, detected a Russian improved Kilo-class submarine that had survived the attacks by being at sea during the strike. The Russian submarine, hunting for the American boats, passed within 4,000 yards of USS Virginia. The American submarine, maintaining absolute silence, allowed the Russian boat to pass without engaging. The mission was to sink the Black Sea fleet at its moorings, not conduct open ocean submarine battles that would alert Russian forces to American locations. By dawn on June 18th, the full extent of the devastation became visible. At Sevastopol, 24 of 26 Russian ships were sunk, sinking, or damaged beyond repair. Oil slicks covered the harbor. Smoke from burning vessels darkened the sky. Bodies and debris floated in waters where Russia's Black Sea fleet had been moored. At Novorossiysk, 15 of 17 ships were destroyed. The total count: 39 Russian warships confirmed sunk, 4 severely damaged and non-operational. Only 4 vessels survived: 2 patrol boats and 2 support ships that had been at sea or in protected positions during the attacks. The human cost was catastrophic for Russia. Approximately 3,200 Russian sailors were killed, most trapped inside ships that sank rapidly at their moorings. Another 840 were wounded, many suffering from burns, blast injuries, or near drowning. The attacks had occurred during nighttime hours when most crews were aboard their ships sleeping, maximizing casualties. Rescue operations continued for days, but the death toll made June 17 through 18 the worst single loss of life in Russian naval history since World War II. Do you think attacking ships at moorings with crews aboard constitutes legitimate warfare or violates laws of armed conflict? Share your perspective below. For the 8 Virginia-class submarines, the mission continued for another week as they exited the Black Sea. USS Virginia and USS Texas departed through the Bosphorus on June 21st, transiting at night on the surface disguised as commercial vessels through electronic warfare measures. USS North Dakota and USS John Warner followed on June 23rd. The remaining 4 submarines departed over the following days. By June 28th, all 8 submarines had reached the Mediterranean and rejoined U.S. naval forces. 0 submarines were lost, 0 American casualties. The most successful submarine attack since World War II had been executed with precision and returned without loss. For Russia, June 17-18 became a day of national humiliation and strategic disaster. The Black Sea Fleet, built over decades at enormous cost, had been annihilated in 4 hours. Putin, addressing the nation on June 19th, blamed Ukrainian sabotage and NATO aggression, while avoiding acknowledgement that American submarines had penetrated Russia's most heavily defended waters and destroyed an entire fleet. But international media, using satellite imagery and intercepted communications, reported the truth. American submarines had conducted the attack. Russia's navy had been defenseless. The strategic implications were immediate and profound. Russia could no longer threaten shipping in the Black Sea. Ukrainian ports, previously under constant attack from Russian ships, were suddenly secure. And NATO maritime operations in the region could proceed without Russian naval interference. The Black Sea, contested for years, was now dominated by the absence of Russian naval power. Rebuilding the fleet would require 10 to 15 years and over $20 billion. Resources Russia couldn't easily allocate while fighting on multiple fronts. For Ukraine, the elimination of the Black Sea Fleet was salvation. Ukrainian officials, while not directly acknowledging American involvement due to operational security concerns, expressed profound gratitude for actions that had lifted the maritime siege. Ports reopened, grain exports resumed, and the economy, strangled by Russian naval attacks, began recovering. The 8 submarines that had conducted the operation would never be publicly acknowledged by Ukrainian leadership, but their impact was measured in lives saved and cities no longer under bombardment. The families of the 3,200 Russian sailors killed received official notifications describing the deaths as results of an accident during exercises. The Russian government, unwilling to admit that American submarines had penetrated its defenses and destroyed an entire fleet, suppressed accurate casualty information. Families grieved privately, denied the truth about how their loved ones had died. The sailors, many of them young conscripts, were buried in mass graves or lost at sea. Their sacrifice, intended to project Russian power, had instead exposed Russian vulnerability. For the 8 submarine commanding officers who had executed Operation Crimson Dawn, June 17th represented the pinnacle of their careers. They had conducted one of history's most successful submarine attacks, achieving complete surprise, destroying designated targets, and escaping without loss. The operation remained highly classified, with details known only to senior defense officials. But within the submarine community, the 8 COs became legends. Their tactics, planning, and execution would be studied in submarine warfare schools for generations. As salvage operations began at Sevastopol and Novorossiysk, the scale of destruction became fully apparent. 39 warships resting on the bottom. 4 more damaged beyond economical repair. Over 3,000 bodies recovered, with hundreds more never found. And a naval base that had been a symbol of Russian power transformed into a maritime graveyard. The Black Sea Fleet, which had existed in various forms since the 18th century, had been effectively eliminated in a single night by 8 submarines operating with deadly precision. Now I want 3 perspectives from you. First, does attacking ships at moorings represent legitimate military tactics, or does it violate conventions of warfare? Second, what does this operation reveal about the vulnerability of naval bases to submarine attack? Third, should such operations be acknowledged or remain classified? Comment your detailed analysis below. Your insights drive Navy mission conversations. And if this breakdown of the most devastating submarine attack in modern history gave you new understanding of undersea warfare capabilities, prove it by hitting that like button, subscribing to Navy Mission, and turning on notifications. Until next time, stay silent, stay lethal, and remember that submarines strike where enemies feel safest.